Welcome to the program, The Uganda We Want. My name is Robert Mulanzi, and today we are privileged to have one of the administrators, educator, and an evangelist in this country. He's a senior citizen whom we are going to have a discussion, a dialogue about the Uganda we want. And if we are to establish this country, we've got to look into the following key mountains of this country. One, the mountain of family, the mountain of religion, the mountain of education, media, entertainment, business, and of course, government. And so in the program, The Uganda We Want, we move out, we look out for you who is, has experience when it comes to the mountain that I've talked about, and you share to us what you think, what you want. In the program, The Uganda We Want, we look out for key influencers of this nation who have experience in education, in entertainment, in business, to mention but a few, and they share with us the Uganda they want, the Uganda they envision, the Uganda they want to see. That's why we have this program on Dream TV. And of course, before I introduce the guest we have today, I just want to say thank you for all of you who go out on our social media platforms and you like, you comment, you share. We are very grateful because you've made this program what it is, because you share, you comment, and you look out for us on social media platforms. And of course, if you're there and you want to be part of this, please just go on your account, whether on Instagram or Facebook account or Twitter or YouTube, and just type in The Uganda We Want. Today in the program, The Uganda We Want, we bring to you Dr. John Musisi Senyonyi. Is a mathematician, academician, evangelist, an administrator in Uganda. He was an immediate Vice Chancellor of Uganda Christian University, a private institution in this country. He was appointed in that position in 2010. And of course, after a few years, he resigned and handed over to Aaron Mushengeji in August 2020. He was born in Nakasongola in 1956 to Eliakim Kaja, a school teacher, and Mrs. Kaja, a full-time housewife. He's one of the 13 siblings, and one of his brothers, the late Peter Nyombi, Uganda's former Attorney General and former Member of Parliament for Bululi County in the Nakasongola district. We are going to hear from Reverend Dr. Canon Senyonyi about the Uganda he envisions. Let's continue from where we stopped when Reverend John Senyonyi was speaking to us about the Uganda we want. My name is Robert Mulanzi. Join me and we welcome Reverend Dr. John Senyonyi to speak to us on the Uganda he envisions. Doctor, I'm happy to have you on the show on Dream TV and on this particular program, The Uganda We Want. Could you please greet our viewers?
Thank you very much, and I want to greet you viewers. It's a joy for me to be able to address a topic that I think each one of us should be participating in. And so thank you for the opportunity.
Well, you're welcome, Doctor. As a mathematician, an evangelist, an academic administrator, which Uganda do you envision?
As a minister of the church, I have refused, in some cases, people who come to me, say, for marriage, and they give me 1 or 2 months notice. I say, what am I going to do with you?
In just 1 or 2 months?
Because for me,
days.
before you enter your marriage, I need to prepare you for what you're going into. Because all of that needs to be looked at. I need to be able to prepare them so that they understand what is marriage all about. Then there are aspects, of course, of parenting that are very important. Now, so anyway, the family, for me, is where it begins. Now, when it comes then to schools, we may not be able to do much for public schools as they bring us together with every Tom, Dick, and Harry, and even Harriet. Right? But when it comes to church-founded schools,
because they are there, and we have
yes,
them.
And the churches have them. Actually, you know, I was surprised some years ago to find out that the Church of Uganda, for example, has more schools than even government. More schools than even government. Primary schools. Primary and secondary, I think. So, what is our impact there? What is our impact? Fortunately now, a number of people are beginning to wake up to that reality, to make sure that there is real attention to that. But what it will take, as far as I'm concerned, is a lot more than doing the superficial, let us pray on parade and so forth. That is okay, it's good. I'm not disparaging it. But in my thinking, how involved is the church in drawing up the curriculum?
Oh.
Because the curriculum is one. You see, it is sent to the public schools as much as it's sent to the religious founded schools. So the involvement there is most critical.
If
The
they are not
influence.
The influence, because when they are
Yes.
involved, their influence will be seen
Yeah.
in decision making, in making key in implementation or enforcing
Precisely.
the policies
Yes,
that are
yes.
being discussed.
I mean, talk about the issue that is now, of course, being discussed everywhere. It's in the papers almost every day. The issue of pregnant girls
Going back to school.
going back to school. I was honestly shocked when I realized that as government, and I mean this took months, and government was talking about taking back pregnant girls into school. And I was listening to the church, which was silent.
Oh, the
Which was
government
silent.
said what they are planning to do,
Yeah,
and the church you're saying that should come in was
said
silent.
nothing. And yet they have the schools.
Wow, there's a big
So
problem there.
I did get an opportunity anyway to challenge the church or the religious establishment in this country. And I said, why are we so silent about this? Why aren't we talking about what it will mean? How is that child going to go there in school, sit with a baby like I saw in one of the pictures, being distracted by the baby, or the pregnant girl going back to school and she starts getting maybe woozy or something? What do you expect is going to happen? But so I asked them, have you prepared the teachers, the school teachers, head teacher, and so forth? Have you prepared for counseling facilities for the children? Have you accepted what government is saying without any digesting of it? I asked many questions anyway. And essentially, I was saying, look, it's not just business as usual. You don't just bring a pregnant girl, sit her in the class, a girl with a child, or even in some cases where they were saying that they've got to leave the children with the grandparents. What if the grandparents are not there?
Because we can't generalize each and
Yeah.
everything.
What if they're not there? So, what about the fact that this little baby, you see, the one thing that sometimes we have lost is the understanding that these first years of the child are the most formative. And because they are the most formative, they are the years when the child needs the parent the most. If we understand what growth is like, if you were to draw a line or whatever just to show what the growth of a person is, we always start from most dependent to independent. But in between here, it's a process. So what is happening now is you're talking of a little baby, maybe a month old, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, and the mother just takes off. The other day I was even seeing a girl in one of the schools running, I think something like 3 kilometers to go and breastfeed the kid.
And then she has to come back for classes.
And you're telling me that's normal? You see, what we don't understand is governments the world over are not moral institutions.
They are what?
Because they bring together people who believe or who don't believe, whatever the truth or whatever the lie. So they cannot be moral institutions. So when government dictates, the religious institutions have got to come in and question. And that's exactly what they never did. And because they never did that, schools were reopened, and all of a sudden, they found themselves with a problem on the table. But is it that it had just come? No. Why were we irresponsive when government was speaking? I don't think the government is blind to reason. I don't think so. But if the influence of the church is not brought to bear on government, which government is populated by our church members.
I was going to ask that, because why then do we have the silence of the church when some of the leaders in government or in those so-called leadership positions are members of the church?
What government usually does to many of these people is to secularize them. Sadly. Because government, like I said, is not a moral institution. And so what usually happens is, as people join government, if let us say you are a politician, you've got to please people of the entire spectrum of belief, if you understand what I mean. And the only safe refuge for any politician is secularism. Or so they think. But that position is weakened further when even those who would have stood with the church do not see any movement from the church to support them to do what is right.
Oh.
Or sometimes what happens is some politicians, when they are in government, they are in parliament, they are what? They somehow become the authority on matters of morality. That's wrong. That's not how it works. If I become an MP today, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden I am a master of morality. That now I can teach others. So I look at these politicians as they talk to people about morality and I say, really? Why don't you stick to your area and allow us then to speak to this area which people need as much as they need your politics? So when the church, the voice of the church is not even emboldening some of its members who are in the political space, you will find that it's those members who are in the political space become secularized because of the nature of government. And I'm not saying here that our faith should be oppressive to people who believe differently. No. I don't believe in that. But like I say, that all truth is God's truth. I do believe that if we do the right thing, if we do what is true, it does not matter what the person believes, they will nod and they will say, yeah, that is true.
That's true.
And even as a church, we should know, what do we take into the public space and what do we retain for ourselves? You know, because some things you may need to do in the public space, and you know that there is going to be agreement on this. Simple example, murder. I mean, who would stand up in public, irrespective of what they believe, and say it's okay to murder? No one. So in those areas where we agree, why don't we speak? But even in the areas that appear to be hazy,
controversial,
are we able to present arguments so that we win over those who don't believe like we do? We've been very weak as Christians, to be honest. Very weak in that area. And to me, that leads me to
the body.
Something that I think is very important in the very area we are discussing, which we started at Uganda Christian University, and that was a think tank, the Africa Policy Center. And the purpose for that think tank is to do research, to come up with researched information that will enable people to appreciate truth as it is and strengthen the church. It still exists, and I'm happy about that. But you do need think tanks. You know, that's the job of think tanks. They do the research, they try to find out what exactly is happening, and so on and so forth. And for them, their job is very simply to ensure that their missives, whatever they issue out, is something that is founded on solid truth, especially if it's a Christian think tank.
Okay.
Because there are other think tanks that are not as committed to the truth. Yeah.
They think, but maybe what they put in the tank is
well, I mean,
kind of
it's very simple, and it happens everywhere, that there are those people who, you know, when you come to think, sometimes you can come with your own idea.
Man, you don't want to accept
and so
anyone else's
you research
idea.
To buttress your idea. If we are talking about biblical interpretation, that is the difference between exegesis and eisegesis. Because exegesis is you allow the truth to speak to you, the truth that you observe, the truth that you see there in the Bible. But eisegesis, I want to believe that everybody will be healed. So you go to the Bible and only look for the verses that talk about healing, and you say everybody will be healed.
Even if the healing, the context of that passage is completely different.
Exactly.
You just take healing.
So that's where we usually get problems.
Okay, let me take you back. You talked about the the issue that is ongoing for pregnant girls to go back to school.
Well, I actually, when I was talking to the religious establishment through the Interreligious Council, that is exactly what I said. That what's happening now is setting a precedent, and you will not stop it. Setting a precedent. So for me, when it comes to that issue, and this is something that I thought they would discuss a lot more extensively, they probably did, I don't know. I was, in my thinking, if I was looking for a solution, I would look for a solution that is good for both the teenage mother and the child. I don't want to look for a solution, because most of the discussion I'm hearing, it's about the teenage mother going back to school.
It's one-sided.
Nobody is discussing that little kid who now must miss the mother, who now cannot enjoy a better life. In fact, worse still, the psychologists will tell us that in those formative years, if the child is bereft of a mother's love, if the child is bereft of parental care, what you're producing is going to manifest years in the future. And you're going to start, what has been seen, you're going to start having a situation where young people start viewing some areas of criminality as normal. Or they will look at immorality as normal.
You will have a young...
You see, let's not play with those years. Let's not play with those years. Particularly the first ones. You've got to establish that mother-child bond. And it doesn't take very long. A year or two. Some people will say, oh, but by then she will be too old. And then I say to myself, but these kids have been sitting for the last 2 years.
Have they become too old?
So, exactly. Have they become too old?
That would be my question, personally. Have they
when I
become
went to
too
do
old?
my PhD, I was studying with people in their 50s and 60s. Were they too old? You see, that argument to me seems to put more emphasis on equipping this child maybe for the economy than equipping this child for the economy, while at the same time you are equipping the child, the little child who has been born, the baby, for normal growth as a child. We've neglected the baby. So I would then be arguing that let's find a solution that allows for that bonding, okay, to happen in a safe place.
And the solution you're providing shouldn't stop only for post-COVID era or period.
No.
But even the next generation.
And we should stop this business of looking at education as if it must be had within this time period or within this age. That is nonsense. It doesn't exist anywhere. Education doesn't exist anywhere. And actually, not even in Uganda. That concept doesn't exist. When I was a young man, I do remember the community centers in the different towns. They brought adult education to teach adults who had not had the opportunity to go to school. Teach them literacy. Teach them literacy. I even remember the very first movies, we used to call them cinemas. And in Nakasongola, it was brought at, our cinema hall was the police station, public, open area. So all I'm saying is, when it comes to education, it's never too late to have it.
Education.
Yeah. I mean, here I am. I'm retired. Now in my, should I say, upper 60s, right? But when I'm not out doing other things, I'm writing, I'm reading, I'm doing all that. I'm still getting educated. Okay? I'm still getting educated. So let's not rush. It's a pity that we do have a retirement age, which cuts you off at 65. But I think we need to understand that education can be had at any time.
At any time.
Waiting a year or two will not kill that child, especially if you're willing to give the support. I definitely support these girls being given an education, but all I'm saying is to give the girl an education at the expense of the child is cruelty at its best. That's not what should be happening.
We are speaking to Dr. Reverend Canon John Senyonyi. But now here we have our education system that, teaches or educates a child, and when he or she comes out, now the employer, Raymond, wants to give him or her camera to operate, but he has to take him through another 3 to 4 months of training before he actually learns how to operate a camera or to do the editing on a laptop. So how can our education system handle that challenge to achieve the Uganda we want for better
In other words,
education.
to fit the educated graduate into the job.
Yes.
The truth is, it does not matter what the university does. As long as that child is still in university, you can take them for internships, you can take them for whatever. That is not the end of what they will need to be fully skilled for the work. And so there is a sense in which I feel like the employers have been unfair to students. Yes, they've been unfair. You see, when you are in university, and particularly in our kind of context where the opportunities are very, very meager, to expect that a graduate will be so proficient, they will just plug in like a plug in a socket, is to me very unfair. We should be able to allow people to grow. That's where some people talk about being teachable. Then I would have a problem if the person is not teachable. Okay? I would have a problem with that. But I would also have a problem, of course, if the person says he's an engineer and he cannot even put a bulb. Electrical engineer.
That's why the challenge is, at least the basics of camera operation, someone doesn't know. And he has spent 23 years in school.
Yes. Yeah, but the level of proficiency that's needed at work is always higher than the level at which you graduate. That one we need to admit.
Okay.
I'm looking at myself when I graduated. I mean, there are blunders that I often think about. I don't even want to talk about them. But I think about them with shame. Why did I do that? I had been trained very well. I had graduated first class. Right? But here I am in my job place. And I am still making some of these blunders. And to me, that's what leads me to a certain level of understanding of where the graduates are at the time they leave institutions. That let us show, if the person is completely green, that's a different matter. I honestly don't think you should be completely green. That would be too much. But I also know that if you've worked behind that camera, or if you've worked on that road as a civil engineer, or if you've worked on wiring buildings and so forth, that after 5 years, your knowledge base will still be the same as when you graduated. I don't think so. There is a growth that happens. Not to mention even the fact that even the place where you work may have a different environment. So let our judgments be tempered as far as I'm concerned. Now, please understand me. I'm not arguing for complete ignorance of that in which you graduated. No, that is inexcusable. I'm not arguing for that. But I am saying that sometimes employers are expecting this graduate to work at the level of someone who has been working for 10 years or even 5 years. That is unfair. Okay. That's very unfair.
Okay, so just to go away from that, at primary, I think now, and secondary, they are trying to revisit the curriculum, do some edits in it. Don't you see a conflict right now between the university curriculum and the lower secondary curriculum?
You mean in the sense of the skills and what not being?
Skills, yes. And
that to me, I think, is an area where not even many people in government understand. It is a shame when we start thinking that the only thing that the population needs is skills. I don't think so. What university education does or gives you that you will not get in primary or secondary school is critical thinking. we need thinkers before you even talk about skills. Simple. When I was at university, I started doing computer science. And at that time, we were using the very first computers, I guess, that were there. It was called a mainframe. It existed in one of the rooms at the University of Nairobi. And all we did was to program, and then they would feed, they would feed those whatever we programmed into, cards, which cards would be fed into the mainframe, and the mainframe would speak back and give you your report. Okay? That's where we started. Right? The next time I had a big interface with the computers, not too many years later, but once I graduated from Nairobi, there was a lull there of about maybe a couple of years or so when I was not dealing with the computers. So when I went to do my postgraduate studies at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and now I had my own computer, right? Before, I was programming using Fortran, sometimes COBOL, and they would be fed there and the answers would come back. Now all of a sudden I'm seated before this thing, I've got to produce whatever I want.
Is you operating it now?
Okay? Well, even these now are a very different, very different generation. Now, if I had not been given some thinking, serious thinking, migrating from the mainframe to that would be a problem. But when you are trained in thinking, the new things that come are things that you can adapt to. Okay? That's the point. But thinkers also do something else. Those things that you are adapting to, who produces them? It is people who think. Who sit down and they think about the circuit, about how information will move and so on. Those are thinkers. I'm not saying others don't think. I'm simply saying that what university does is to teach you critical thinking. Now, you can even carry that into the humanities. Why are people capable of carrying arguments in the very fine details of policies? It's because they're thinkers. They were trained to be thinkers. Now, when you train people only in skills, you're actually saying these people are not needed. Now, the highest form, of course, for the thinkers is research. Who is going to do research for us? Yeah? I have a PhD in mathematical statistics. So of course, now I moved away a little bit into theology and other areas. But give me anything, then I can do my own research. That is thinking. I don't have to be supervised to, it's the skills. So if you're talking about skills, these are skills of thinking. It's not skills of making a table or making a chair or fixing a camera and so forth. No. If we are focusing only on skills, and we think universities should also become skilling institutions, we are missing something, because everything that we are using, the new technologies, are all about
thinking.
So to me, I do take some exception to all this. I totally agree about skilling. So when we talk about primary and secondary schools being equipped with skills, I support it. But I don't want it to be supported at the expense of creating thinkers.
That has to be for university.
No, I mean, others also must learn how to think. But the highest level then comes in with people in the higher echelons of education. Someone made a very interesting statement, and you can think about it. Who are the highest paid people, say in the civil service or in institutions? It's not the people who are making their fingers dirty, although they can and they should. It's the people who think. Which direction should we go? Vision, right?
Yes.
Do we have too many staff so that we scale down? They're thinking. Those are the people who are paid most of the money. It's not the people who
who are doing what we call hands-on.
No. So all I'm saying is we need both. We need both.
Hands-on and thinkers.
Exactly.
Wow.
In fact, thinking governs skills.
Skills.
Yes.
Oh, thinking governs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Skills, wow.
Because even those people who are in occupational training, they should also think. Their thinking may not be at the same level as a PhD or a professor or whatever, but they should also think. That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
So let's not get rid of the thinkers. Simply because, so I support the skilling. I support the skilling, and I want to be very clear about that. But as I support the skilling, I do not want it to kill the very essential aspect of education, which is thinking. It must never.
Wow. Reverend Dr. Canon Senyonyi, as we're about to sign out, because our time is fast spent.
Sure.
Which other Uganda do you want to see away from the education realm?
I think, to me, like I said, it all begins with the family. And seriously, even when, and it touches on education really in many ways. And all I'm saying is education is tripartite.
What do you mean?
In dimension. It involves the teacher, it involves the child, it involves the parent.
We've talked about the parent.
Yes.
We've talked about the student and the teacher. When it comes to the teacher, not so extensively, but of course, you know what is coming up. Well, I mean, some of the things I do not follow, but I do know that one of the things that has happened because of our overemphasis on education, we've tended to make the teacher this omniscient animal who determines the future of our children. Okay, I don't think so. I think, in all honesty, teachers are very important. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taught or lectured as I did. But at the same time, teachers need to understand they do need the parents for this work to be done properly. So I'm not looking at these as mutually exclusive in any way. You know, the parent doing their thing separately, the child separately, and the teacher doing it separately, but the three should be working together. Now, what that will mean, first and foremost, is that it requires good policies from the Ministry of Education, policies that emphasize that. Two, schools themselves should allow for non-intrusive but definitely enhanced interaction between the parent and the teacher and the child. Oh, we've been having the teacher and the parents exclusive of
quite
the,
often
of the students.
Yeah, but the mistake there is, of course, when people think that the student is like a receptacle of information, and they do not realize that the student has an opinion. I don't agree that the child, even if the child is in primary 7 or primary 5, please don't make the mistake of thinking that that child does not see what is happening or does not think, I want to be this. Even if they want to be, like many of us, we used to want to be policemen because of the uniform. Let them think. Then you challenge them. You see, let them think. It's important to involve the child. And so that's why I say it's tripartite. So that there is a discussion, there is constant interface between the three. So it is that sense of trying to keep the parent away from school that for me I would say would be in error. Let the schools understand, the teachers understand that it is important for the parents to be involved. When my children were in primary school, because my wife and I do not believe and did not believe in putting our children in boarding school in primary. Never.
Why?
Those are the formative years. I mean, now they are no longer here at home. So why am I in a hurry to get them out of my house? Why? Right? Let them first see me. Because the first school, and that is the biggest emphasis, the first school for this child on any subject, including marriage, is my home.
Home.
Isn't
home
it?
School.
Exactly. Even if it is just observing how I'm relating with my wife, that is educative. So I would say that schools need to open up. So I was going to say that when my children were still in primary school, fortunately I worked not far from that particular school, and I would choose times to go and sit in class as a parent. Just sit in class. And these days I've asked my children, I've said, how did you feel when I did it? They were so proud. That boost in the child is something they often miss. We take them to school, you study. They come back home, we continue with the, do your homework. Have you finished it? Now go and bathe. Now go and eat food. And now wash your clothes. And then we tuck them in bed. Where is that opportunity for us to interface properly in that tripartite relationship? So I would go and sit there. I never even believed in, even when I got a driver, we never believed in sending a driver to pick our children. Sometimes we've become so important that we think, I am doing very important business here. That work has to be done by a driver. Now, what is more important than your child? What is more important? And of course, the schools will not tell you you shouldn't send a driver. Now, one of the things that we have come to realize, even earlier this morning I was watching something about it, is that many, especially many of the girl children have been abused by drivers. Even this morning I was just listening to something like that, where the driver, they didn't know the parents because they have all these facilities. They came from poverty, they've become middle income or middle class or whatever. And now they think because they've become middle class, they have this poverty mentality that is the driver who does it. It's a poverty mentality. And you know what was happening, what I was listening to this morning? The driver poking his fingers in the private parts
of the girl. Oh.
This is what you get because you have relinquished your responsibility.
You're too busy.
Too busy. So if you are too busy, you are even too busy to know the state of your girl. Whether the child is well, whether the child slept well. I mean, we were busy. We ourselves were very busy. But we took time to take care of our children. Now parents are taking children to boarding school at 3. It's like taking them to prison. And those are things, if I had the powers in this Uganda of ours, boarding school at a certain age should be completely abolished. I totally agree. It must not happen. Of course, I know bringing a solution like that involves a lot of other things to be done. Because one of the reasons why parents put them in boarding school is because maybe they live very far away from a very good school. So when you are in Mukono, you are forced to take the child to Kampala. And yet you travel a lot. So what are you going to do? There are all those challenges, but the truth of the matter is we must do the right thing.
Wow. You've heard it. What is your responsibility as a citizen in regard to improving our education system? It's a question I leave out for you after hearing from Reverend Dr. John Senyonyi. My name is Musisi Robert. For now, I say bye-bye.